Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Max and Nikki 1000th Time Reactions.
Where we react to a song for our 1000th time listening to the song.
That's right.
Today we're going to be listening to Don't You Want Me by Human League.
The
Now-
Human League, actually.
We've heard this song countless times, way more than 1,000 times, but for all intents and purposes, we're going to call it our 1,000th time listening to the song. Before we get into it, just want to remind you, as I usually do, that we have another channel called Max and Nikki on which we perform oldies, tunes, jazz standards, and originals in that vein. And we have comedy videos on there as well, so check that out.
But for right now, let's get into Don't You Want Me by the Human League.
For the 1,000th time.
You were working as a waitress in a cocktail bar. When I met you, I picked you out, I shook you up and turned you around, turned you into someone new. Now 5 years later on, you've got the world at your feet. Success has been so easy for you. But don't forget it's me who put you where you are now, and I can put you back down too. Don't you want me? You know I can't believe it when I hear that you won't see me. Don't you want me? You know I don't believe you when you say that you don't need me. It's much too late to find. You think you change your mind? You better change it back or we will both be sorry. Don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? Oh, don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? Oh.
I was working as a waitress in a cocktail bar. That much is true. But even then I knew I'd find a much better place, either with or without you. The 5 years we've had have been such good times. I still love you. But now I think it's time I live my life on my own. I guess it's just what I must do.
Don't you want me? You know I can't believe it when I hear that you won't see me. Don't you want me? You know I don't believe you when you say that you don't need me. It's much too late to find. You think you've changed your mind? You better change it back or we will both be sorry. Don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? Oh, don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? Oh. Don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? Oh, don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? Oh, don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? Oh, don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? Oh, don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? Oh, don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me?
All right.
What a jam, huh?
Great danceable tune. Another great danceable tune. And a real great melody there.
Sure. A little history lesson for you guys. that was actually the first song from the British New Wave in the 80s to hit #1 on the Billboard Top 100
Really?
chart.
I did not know that.
Billboard Hot
I-
100, rather.
Well, actually, I think I did know that.
And it really kind of solidified the fact that
1981, right?
in 1981, yeah, exactly. And it was
think so.
kind of signified the sort of the coming of the second wave of British pop music in the
America.
80s, in
that
America.
is.
that is.
Sure. And that is kind of, we were talking about Rio from Duran Duran in a previous episode, and how that mixed, real instrument playing with some synth, but this song is purely
synth, actually.
purely synth, and
Synth
maybe
and
some
keyboards.
samples. I mean, keyboard. But you got that. Those
the
drums
sound-
are synth. Programmed drums.
But the sound is
you got
still.
synth. I mean, and even the bass. That there's no real actual bass in there. It's kind of this synth.
Sure.
Bass sound.
But there's some really cool sound effects nonetheless in it.
Sure.
And the overall
I'm not saying it's
quality
bad.
of-
I'm saying it's
all,
cool.
All over quality of the sound was new, and it was hip, and it was different.
Sure. And as I said, a very infectious melody nonetheless.
Sure, and I'm sure this was being played a lot in the dance clubs at the time.
Sure.
Because this is a classic example of those British new wave pop songs that kind of combine elements of disco and dance from the late 70s and sort of
And
this
this post-punk
kind of sound, that sort of just almost continued dance music into the 80s, essentially.
Sure. And what's cool about, there was a whole, in the late 70s, this kind of ethos of, disco sucks kind of a thing. And I like that 80s new wave was all about like, no, wait, dancing is cool. You can still dance.
Right. And, it wasn't just about the music. I mean, for
the
example,
fashion was
fashion,
very
so,
much-
one more history lesson here for you.
Okay.
Initially, so this song actually has, some female lead singers on the second verse of this song.
Sure.
And the idea there is, initially this band just had guys in it.
Well, that's not the idea.
And there were these two girls that were big fans of the band, and the lead singer really liked their look and said, "Hey, I like your look." And
this is not just a reaction video; it's a history lesson.
This was
as well.
prior to them becoming really popular, but they thought, I think Human League wasn't very popular at all at the time, but they had these fans, and they thought they befriended these fans, and eventually the lead singer invited them to join the band because he thought, hey, they would be a good way of representing what the band is trying to do. The look of the band.
Yeah, fashion was such an integral part of the 80s. I mean, I know you're thinking fashion existed in all bands, in the 60s for sure.
But
too.
more like high fashion was.
Yeah, I feel like fashion in the 60s was kind of, that was kind of to help give at least in the early 60s, help give more of a polished look and kind of as maybe sort of a help with a selling point for the band.
Sure, like the mop tops of the Beatles.
Well, no, and wearing suits.
Sure.
But I feel like in the 80s, they were really making kind of a real statement that, well, I guess the mop tops was a statement, but I feel like it was more part of, the fashion was part of the culture of music.
Sure, I mean,
actually,
even
at the time,
Duran, they went out of their way to hire...
very fashion forward.
They hired, stylists, fashion stylists to make them up in a cutting edge way that was going to look to the future in a way of what fashion was.
I mean, the 80s had a very futuristic kind of look,
Sure.
The aesthetic.
But also,
like that.
a lot of
the
them
lead
were
singer
way
of this band wore makeup, and we think about that now. How we kind of think that how right now we think it's very progressive in our grasp of gender.
gender societal norms of how
fashion
people should dress.
So how we sort of broken down the structures of gender norms with regards to fashion and other things. But they were doing it back in the 80s.
It's nothing new,
it's
guys.
Nothing new, and even in the 70s too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in the 70s too. Yeah, that people like
David
David Bowie
Bowie
and
and
T-Rex were in makeup,
T-Rex.
and definitely David
I
Bowie.
mean, for sure, glam rock definitely had an influence on
Sure,
80s
I mean,
fashion, I'm sure.
a lot of these new wave bands were very influenced by David Bowie specifically, actually.
But look, the Human League clearly.
musically and
You have Dead or Alive. Clearly, I mean,
Boy
they
George,
they
Culture
were
Club.
breaking the barriers of gender fashion norms.
Anyway, great song, great group. Very pioneering sort of 80s new wave band. And I think that'll do it for the reaction for today. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ding that post notification bell to find out about more Max and Nikki reaction videos.
And keep tuning in.